This is Backdoor Boink, where we welcome every side of everyone. Please note, this is an 18-plus podcast. It's time to put in some earbuds if you don't want to answer awkward questions from your children, family, or friends. I'm Kayla, a certified relationship and intimacy coach.
And I'm MJ, and I brought the lube.
In this podcast, we explore the behind the scenes of a weekly wellness topic. Our goal is to help you feel good, be naughty. Thank you for checking out our After Dark, After Hours podcast. You can find more information, including our YouTube channel, social media accounts, events, Discord, and products at boinked.com. That's www.boink-ed.com. Now, let's get in that back door. Okay, here we go. This is so exciting. So today we have a special guest. We've had the opportunity to do this just once before, and so I'm really excited to have Brandi Beckett here with us. Brandi, we met at the TCNE first event. How was that for you, by the way?
Hello. And let me start off by saying thank you for having me on your podcast. I am a fan, so I'm excited to be on here talking with y'all. Oh, yes, the first event at TCNE, that's the trans community of New England. So every year they host this huge conference that they call First Event because it's at the first of the year in the beginning of January, or well, it's actually in the end of January, right? Towards the 20th, 24th.
It's the first month. It's a good way to kick off the year. It was my first time there, so first event still applies.
It was my second time there, and the first time I didn't know what to expect, and I was overwhelmed by just so many different tabling events there and so many different speakers talking about so many different issues, but all an access around the trans community. And it was very interesting how much the trans community can branch out and we can incorporate all of that diversity into this one conference. So I fell in love immediately. And I did one talk my first year. And then for 2024 coming back, they invited me to do a talk for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I was excited. Yes, I did 3 talks. And I wish I could have did 4 or 5. It was so much fun to perform my story and get my message out to this amazing audience that showed up, because not everyone that's there is just trans people or trans community. There are many people that are just allies. There are many people going to these events that are just curious or just don't know what it is to be trans, what the trans community exists of. So those people are my favorite at my talks, when someone is just, I want to understand what is gender. I want to understand what it means to be trans. And that's my target audience for these talks. So
it was fantastic. I can't believe with all that you had, all the presentations that you did, you had time to come over and hang out with me. We connected. Poor MJ. MJ's here. Say hi, MJ.
Hello.
Poor MJ got the remnants every day that I came home from Boston. I was like, oh my gosh, you'll never guess what I learned today. You'll never guess who I met today. And Brandi, your name is still a reoccurring name in our household. You left a very lasting impression, not just for me, but for my household, for my life. So thank you for that. And you had a really, really interesting story that connected to really great life-changing topics, and it connected them together. So let's dive into that.
Yes, let's do. But first, mutual feelings about meeting you, Kayla. My goodness. You became not instantly, but as soon as I got to know a little about you, oh, you're my favorite person there. I was excited to go back and hang out with you at your table. That was so much fun. We must do that some more. So
agreed.
But let's get into my story. I discovered my gender identity on January 7th, 2015.
You have the date.
I have the date. That exact date. Before that day, I never questioned my gender identity because I grew up in the 1980s, right? So in the 80s, like your gender identity and your sexual orientation, those were like linked and yoked together, and you were supposed to use those as like barometers of each other, right? So if you're growing up and you're sexually attracted to girls, as I was okay, I was assigned male at birth, and growing up I was very attracted to femininity. I was attracted to girls. So I was like, oh, that's what's supposed to happen when you're assigned a gender. And then in the 80s, everyone around me, including myself, just assumed that that assignment that you were given, that's your innate identity. And the genitals that you have, that's the only source to reflect on that identity. So whatever genitals you had was associated with the gender you were assigned, and that assignment was dictating which sexual attractions you should have. So growing up, I was attracted to girls. I was so
Yeah,
attracted to girls, and
that
I
was the
never
path that was, like, laid out
right.
for you.
So I
No
did not
question.
question my gender identity. I just didn't do that. I noticed that I was never comfortable in my skin. I just thought I was never doing things right. I was never being a right boy. Like, I was not doing it right. All of my other friends around me were like, they went through puberty and they were proud of how their body was looking. I went through puberty and I was like, this just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. Maybe it'll feel better later. Maybe I could grow into being this boy who's supposed to be a man. And then later in life, I felt like I was just failing at being a man because it never felt comfortable or right for me to express that masculinity, no matter how hard I tried. And I was a very good athlete growing up through my life too. So I grew up in a household that was very masculine forward and very athletic focused. My elder brother was one of the best high school wrestlers in the state of California. I was a very good baseball player. I was very good at track. I played football. I played soccer. I played all of the sports that we threw onto boy sports.
Okay,
And
so,
I
like,
and I was
old
good at
school
them.
touch football, like, tackling all the things, like, whew.
I straight up have brain damage from the 5 years of youth
Oh,
football
no.
I played. There's no question I have brain damage from that sport.
Well, you carry it well. We're just gonna say it adds to the, persona that is Brandy.
So in this environment, I was like, I'm just not good at being a man, a husband, or whatever role I took on. I wasn't good at it. And then in 2012, I challenged myself. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to find happiness and not just love myself, but I wanted to like myself for the first time. I decided to challenge myself without using a safety net to fall back onto. At the time, I was a government employee. I worked for the Department of Defense for 12 years at a Marine base.
No.
Yes, I was in special weapons departments for many of those years. I was around big macho military environment, right? I was also in a 6-year relationship that was dissolving. So I wanted to not only challenge myself, like who I was, like as a person, and at the time, and step back one step, I was a high school dropout. So I wanted to challenge myself academically because I was always told I was smart, but I never had anything to show for it because I literally dropped out of high school by the time I finished like 10th grade. I was I was not comfortable being me.
So
I could not figure it out.
to be clear, so
Mhm.
sorry, how old were you when you had this journey or this moment where you were like, I need to figure myself out mentally, like as far as intellectually, my physical, my and I'm gonna, drop a little sneak peek here, and sexually, you were
Yeah.
gonna go on this journey. Now, how old were you then, if you don't mind my asking?
I was 41. 40,
Wow.
41. Yes. I was I was looking at I could have stayed at the Marine base, worked for Department of Defense, and retired at 60 years old, 62, and then what I would be. And I thought to myself, I don't want to be content in life. I want to challenge myself to see what I could do in this world. I mean, I only have one opportunity for life. There's only one chance on this dance floor, right? And you got to enjoy the dance while you're there. So I decided to quit working for the Department of Defense and go to school. and I wanted to have the college experience. So I found in Tampa, Florida. At the time, I was living in California, but I found Tampa, Florida had a community college that had 5 different campuses, and it had student housing. There was like this huge college, right? And I was like, oh my goodness, I can go and live in student housing and go in person classes. I was excited. I was like, yes, that's the challenge I want to do. I want to see if I can make it to a 4-year college. That was my goal. I wanted to try to figure out who I am and make it to a 4-year college. So in August of 2013, I moved from California to Tampa, and I enrolled in Hillsborough Community College. I didn't know a single person, and I had never visited before that arrival that August. But Hillsborough Community College, it was pretty amazing. And Tampa was very interesting as well, because Tampa's known for a few things. Like the
MJ's
Yankees.
chuckling over there.
The Yankees have their spring training there. They have a football team, and they have many other sports ball stuff, right? But besides sports ball stuff, they have more strip clubs per capita than New York City, Las Vegas, or Los Angeles. In addition to the sports balls and strip clubs like splattered throughout the city, they also have a huge LGBTQ community and a large sex club environment.
Really?
They
MJ's over there
do.
nodding. I'm like, hold on, sweetie. How do you know this? I mean, you
Research.
research. You've never even been to a strip club.
No.
All right. Okay. Sorry. I had to hone in on that face, and he's like smirking and like, yeah, baby, kind of nodding. All right. Go ahead, Brandy. I'm sorry.
So I wanted to challenge myself without using any boundaries or limits to myself. I wanted to really see where I was comfortable at. And I thought I better see where I am sexually. And that was my focus. And I went out to so many of those queer affirming clubs and even some of the queer affirming sex clubs there in Tampa. And I discovered through my exploration, being honest with myself, at that time, I really wasn't attracted to masculinity, but I was very much attracted to femininity. And I enjoyed kind of group sex situations,
Okay.
even before
How
going to
many are we
Tampa.
talking? Like, we going full orgy or?
I have before that, yes. In the part,
Ooh.
yes, the relationship I was in before that, we explored our boundaries of sexual partners as well in that relationship. In fact, on my 40th birthday, because I was born on October 10th, so it's 10/10, and I think no, it wasn't 40th. It would have been my 30th. I'm bad with math, but on the 10th year, the 10th month of the 10th day, my partner and I, we went to Palm Springs to this huge nudist resort. And this nudist resort at night turns into a big sex orgy place with this huge like bed that covers in it. It's like an indoor outdoor room that has a big canopy, but it's all open. And this bed must have room for 20 people on it. And there usually is about 12 to 20 people on this bed. And they have a big a big swimming pool that's like salt water swimming pool. So it feels really nice on
Whoa.
the body. And there would just be dozens of people swimming in there and wild times like that. So I had explored a little bit before I started my deep exploration in Tampa. And I thought, playing with other partners, that's fun. I like that. And I found a lot of things I like, and I found some boundaries I didn't like. But I wanted to discover about myself, and I wanted to explore a little bit more. So I hadn't been before with a male female couple. So just me and a male female couple. I thought
Hmm.
that seems interesting because I've had female partners with me before, but not male female. And I was like, well, how is that going to work? Because at the time, in the sexual encounters I was involved with, I was usually the masculine role.
Right, right. And,
Yes.
as is the stereotype, you were saying
Right.
how this was all laid out for you, as is the
Yes.
stereotype, every man is looking
Hmm.
for that female, male, female combo. Like, give me the two
Yeah.
ladies on me. So okay, so that had been, checked off your list, but
Check
now
that one.
now let's do, and I kind of hate, I have a hate love relationship with this term, but the devil's threesome, two men and a woman. Okay.
Right. So that's exactly what I wanted to explore. And I did explore that a little bit. I recall hooking up with this couple in Tampa, and I didn't play with the guy half of the couple and only played with the gal half of said couple. But I noticed that when that guy was near me, I felt less masculine, and a feeling of wanting to be demure around him overcame me. I didn't expect to have any feelings towards that guy, and I was taken aback by that experience. I know I didn't want to have sex with the guy, but I wanted him to take the helm and control the sexual encounter with the three of us. And at that time, I found myself very perplexed about those feelings. I recall playing that night in my head over and over until it became burned like deep in my memory bank. And I recall feeling just, I need to figure out why. Why was I having feelings of letting go of masculinity and of embracing a subtle demure posture? So this was around December of 2014. And I was getting ready to travel back to California for the holidays. And during that holiday break and the entire time I was in California, I just kept running thought experiments through my head of having a sexual encounter, like a sexual soiree with a guy and a girl. But out of these thought experiments, I came up with an interesting scheme. I was going to dress in some feminine clothing and let the guy just control and do what he wanted with me and his wife or girlfriend. So I remember on the flight back to Tampa, I played that thought experiment slash scheme through my head about 3 dozen more times. And the thought of dressing up in women's clothing, honestly, it was frightening for me. And I felt like I was like stepping out of my comfort zone. But my flight landed in Tampa the evening of January 6th, which gave me just enough time to plan a risque little menage a trois before the start of my classes. And that next day, I had a list of feminine clothing I would need for my little soiree. I had a little black thing. Check. I knew my size in women's shoes. Check. And which size stockings to buy. Check. I was set to go shopping for women's clothing. And this was the first time I ever shopped for any type of feminine anything for myself. But I had a list and I knew my sizes. I was set to go shopping for women's clothing.
I have a question.
Yes.
How did you feel? I mean, you were nervous about, or even frightened about the idea of wearing women's clothing, but the shopping experience, like going out to the stores, what kind of feelings did you have there?
I was completely frightened. I was like, there's no way I'm going to a mall. I was like, there's no way I'm going to a store that has a lot of people. I thought, ooh, Tampa. In Tampa, there's a lot of drag shows. Over in Ybor City, part of Tampa, there's a
Oh,
lot of drag shows. And it's like almost a nightly, daily thing over there. So I was like, oh, there's lots of drag performers here. I'm going to go to where they shop and I won't feel so out of place shopping for women's clothing. That was my idea. And I did find a place that was right next to one of the strip clubs, and they sold the stripper boots and the stripper shoes with big, huge platforms. And so that was the first place I went. And I didn't even try to walk in those shoes at that time. And I couldn't find anything for myself. So I got a little bit more brave, and I was like, well, I'm just going to go down the street. I know there's a little boutique down the road, a consignment boutique, and I'll check out that place. And I went in, and I'm looking around the store. I opened it up, and I was so nervous. I felt like there were hundreds of eyes in that little shop staring at me and judging me harshly. Besides me, it was like one other customer and two employees. But I was still so nervous. I was shaking when I when I asked one of the associates for the changing room. I took off my shirt, my shorts, and I was reaching for the sundress that I picked out, because I picked out 3 items. I picked out a sundress, I picked out a little mini skirt, and I picked out some thigh-high boots and a sexy little top is what I got. And I was so nervous and shaky when I grabbed this sundress in my hands and I took it off its hanger. And I remember staring at it and thinking, this is the first time I've ever put a dress on my body. I have no idea how it's going to look on me. And as I pulled it over my shoulders and just below my knees, and when I opened my eyes, at that moment, I experienced waves of emotions that were confusing, overwhelming, and very exhilarating to me. I did not know what I was feeling or experiencing. To this day, I don't fully grasp what I experienced in that little secondhand boutique. A wave of tingly confusion raced from the top of my head to my stomach, my limbs, and down to my extremities. I stood there, staring at this rectangle mirror in a pseudo catatonic state, hypnotized and dumbfounded by the image staring back at me. I opened my mouth, and the only thing that came out, Brandi. I opened my mouth, and the name Brandi blurted out, and every other word escaped my consciousness. In that mirror, I saw myself for the first time in my life. On that day, January 7th, 2015, I realized that I was no longer on a journey of sexual exploration. No, looking at myself in feminine clothing was not going to answer questions about my sexual expression or about my sexual exploration or about my sexual journey. Those feelings had nothing to do with my sexual orientation. It was not about sex. I completely abandoned my scheme of hooking up with that couple. I did buy a little mini skirt and some thigh-high boots and a cute little top from that boutique. And on my way back to my student apartment, I stopped off at a Dollar General to pick up some foundation and some mascara and some eyeshadow and some lipstick, because I lived with women partners for decades. So obviously I knew plenty about cosmetic applications because I've seen those products in my bathroom for years. Okay. The first thing I learned about presenting myself as feminine was that cosmetic applications are challenging to learn. And I did not know a thing about cosmetic applications. My goodness. Just a few hours after blurting the name Brandi to myself in a mirror, I was in my bathroom attempting to remove all the hair from my legs, my arms, my chest, and my back. I was as hairy as a bonobo. After hacking at my body for nearly 2 hours, I turned my attention to my face. The androgen-driven hair that was carpeting my face was not all going to just disappear, and my sharp facial features, they were not looking so feminine, so I attempted to apply makeup to my face. As I said, sadly, I did not have a clue about the cosmetic world. When I finished applying my makeup, I looked like I was made up by a very drunk, colorblind clown. I looked like a hot mess.
But how did you feel? How did you feel?
That night, I went out to a club dressed in my new feminine clothing. It was the most exciting and exhilarating and the most confusing and frightening night of my life. I was both scared and floating on bliss. I was experiencing the most beautiful euphoria while walking in my thigh-high boots and miniskirt down a cobblestone sidewalk in Ybor City. And at the same moment, I was also experiencing a crushing weight of self-doubt about who I was. I did not know what to expect from that evening, nor did I know what my expectations should be for the next day or the next week, month, or year. What I did know was I felt like a piece of the puzzle that is me was finally placed on the board. I felt like I had been screaming for that missing puzzle piece my entire life, and those echoes never came back to me until I heard them in that little rectangle mirror in Tampa. On January 7th, 2015, I found myself. And that was the most exciting and liberating feeling I could experience. That was the first day I asked honestly about my gender identity. Before that day, I did not know to or think that I could question my gender identity. I was raised in the 1980s.
Oh my gosh. I have only up to this point heard the smallest preview of your experience. And even that small preview was hugely inspiring to me. But to hear the detail, I had no idea you were standing in a boutique when this wave hit you. I had no idea. And I can picture that for you. But I only ever see you as Brandy. I look at you and trying to create that correlation that this was not always you, that you didn't have this connection with yourself. It just blows my mind. What I love from your story is that you started out on this sexual journey. And it is important that we use that word journey because you never know where that path is going to take you. And yours ended up this life changing, identity discovery. And it's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So you went out on the town, Brandy, strut. And by the way, it's scary enough walking cobblestone streets in what I like to refer as fuck me boots. But you had all these additional fears added on top of it. I mean, what was it like waking up the next morning after this exhilarating experience?
I think I was still in shock the next morning. I think I was in shock the whole week following that. And I didn't know what to think of it. The only thing I could associate with was cross-dressing. I had
Oh.
a little inkling of the cross-dressing community. I've seen people cross-dress and I thought, maybe that's me. And so the next day I went out to a club there in Ybor City where I believe that a large portion of not trans community as a general, but a cross-dressing portion of people would hang out at. And so I went there and I started meeting some people who identify as cross-dressers. And I even became pretty good buddies with this, we'll call her Shally. And Shally would go out and we had a great time. She took me to a few of these sex clubs and Shally had a good time at the sex clubs. And about a week into this exploration of thinking, hey, maybe I'm a cross-dresser. Maybe that's what I like because it really felt good. And that's how they explain it. Like Shally and a few other people I would talk with, they would tell me it was like, for them, it was a lot of it was a sexual charge. A lot of it was a play. It was a fun. It was the transformation from masculine to feminine in like a blink of an eye, where you can go with the day and be masculine, at night be feminine, and just explore that character within you. And that's the way they explain it, like a character that they perform that's part of them, but not the whole self of them.
So,
And
like
I
the
would
role playing side
Role
of
playing,
of sexual
exactly.
experiences.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, let's do that. And then about after hanging out a few times that night, Shally's like, let's go shopping. And I was like, let's do that. That sounds great. And she goes, come pick me up at my place around 2 p.m. And I'm like, I'll be there. And I text at 1:59, I'm outside your door, Shally. And then out walked Justin. And I was like, I spent 2 hours preparing myself to go out because every time I was going out since that day when I went out, I unless I was going out where people already knew I was established at school or something, I was wanting to present myself as feminine as I could. And so I took 2 hours to dress up, shave off all my rugged hair, and try to make up my face somehow. And do a little something something with my hair, and I show up and Justin jumps in my car and I felt so uncomfortable. Justin
Oh.
really knew how to shop, but it wasn't the same as hanging out with Shelly. And then I started to question the the way they look at presenting themselves as feminine and the way I am tapping into this femininity. And I was like, that's not the same thing. And I started to realize that right away. And then I started to gravitate towards transgender women. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's kind of oscillating more in my direction. That kind of feels like where I am. And the very first night I went out, the first person I ever talked with and interacted with was this amazing trans person. I didn't get her name, but she was the door person at this club walking in. It was a very popular club too. And she stops me and she's like, oh dear, she recognized my makeup skills. She's like, you're pretty new, right? And I was like, uh-huh. And she's like, well, if you decide that you're going to transition, here are 3 things that will change your life the most and will make you feel the most like you. She's like, hair, get rid of it. Laser's very important. Hormones, they will make you feel like you. And top surgery will make the society address you as you. And I was like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, lady, because this is like night 1 and I'm confused and scared. I don't know what's going on. I was like, but that stuck with me because, oh my goodness, that came true because when I discovered that it's not a sexual bend, it's not a fetish, it's not a character within me. I am tapping into my identity and I need to express it. I was like, I don't just want to express this identity I'm tapping into. I need to. And I'm not going to hold that back in a closet. And so from that point on, from January 15, I was full on board exploring who I am and pulling that out as best I could.
And look at you today. Oh my god. I know people are listening on a podcast. They can't see you, but you glow.
Oh, thank you.
We actually talked about this, the difference between gender identity and gender expression a little bit. And
Mhm.
once you were able to find that meeting between the two, you just glow. You're absolutely beautiful inside and out.
Thank you. Oh,
Of
thank
course.
you. As are you. You're both very beautiful people.
Do you hear that, MJ? Oh, he's got the full eye. Oh, making cutesy faces. He
He's
is
making both
beautiful.
stoic and cutesy faces at the same time.
He somehow manages that very, very well. I actually have a question
Yes.
for MJ, actually. Because after having conversations with Brandi, I had questions for myself. So, MJ, have you, because you were born, I'm sorry, I'm calling you out, 79. And so growing up, 80s, 90s, I would say 90s started to be a little bit more accepting. Have you ever questioned your identity, MJ? Like your gender identity?
No.
It's always been male for you.
Yep.
Okay.
Always.
Have you always felt comfortable being male and presenting male?
Yeah, that I
Then
have.
Okay. If for me, okay, so for me that blows my mind. And this is going to be the first time that I've ever talked about this. I've been doing live videos or some form of, talks for the last 3 years. And I think it was about 2 years ago that I came out as bisexual to listeners and viewers. But after talking with you, oh my gosh, apparently it goes deeper than that for me. So back in my college exploration, I had a thought experiment. And I was like, okay, I've always envied the masculine. And I thought that it was, some form of self protection. I have some trauma in my past. I also, from the age of 13, lived, strictly with my dad. Maybe there was some influence there, but I associated with the masculine with safety, with strength, and, that could talk to our culture. So in college, I was like, I'm going to spend the first semester as Kayla. and I'm going to spend the second semester as Caleb. And it's purely a social experiment. Like, how are people going to treat me? And blah, 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 blah. That was my thought experiment. I never got to live that out. There were some family tragedies that resulted in me having to withdraw from school after my first semester. And it was something that was always on my mind. Plus, when I met MJ, and I thought this was a normal thing. Like, would you still love me if I, gained weight? Would you still love me and take care of me if I was ever in a horrific accident? Well, my version of that was, would you still love me if I got surgery and got a penis? Like, would you still be with me? You have, like, if we're ever gonna make this work, you just have to answer yes to that. Like, it has to be a possibility that's on the table. And what was your reaction? That must have been like a month into the relationship.
I honestly don't remember at this point.
I mean, you answered it the right way,
I must have.
obviously. Like, okay, it's part of you. Maybe it's a hypothetical. So I was talking with a female friend of mine the other day. She goes, yeah, no, that's not anything that's ever crossed my mind. Either of those scenarios, she's like, I've always been comfortable being a woman. And that just blows my mind. Just like your answer, MJ, like it blows my mind that it's just natural just to be. So, Brandi, at TCNE, meeting you, having all of these talks, I was like, I'm not fully a woman, and I'm not fully a man either. And so I've talked with MJ, pronouns she, they, and just that moment, I look in the mirror now and I go, what I see there is okay. Because I don't have to strive to this unattainable feminine, and I don't have to strive to this unattainable male that for me were like the ultimate goals, like one way or the other. And I look in the mirror and I go, that's okay. I look good. I look like I feel okay in my own skin now, just from having this conversation with you, just from having this conversation with MJ. And it's more than just my sexual identity as a bisexual. I guess it's pansexual now, but I grew up as it being bisexual. So holy shit. It's absolutely, absolutely amazing. And it is mind-blowing to me that people out in the world, they're just like, yeah, I'm comfortable with who I am. And I guess my thing that I want to put out there is if you start to have those questions, embrace them. Start to really look at them, because once you're on the other side of finding those answers, holy shit.
Oh my God, the journey to discovering yourself is amazing, because think about the end goal. When you look inside to find yourself, the end goal is discovering yourself. That's all you can do, right?
Yep.
And then expressing who that person is, that is the most beautiful thing to me. I love the person who I am on the inside, and I like that person. So that's why I express that person. And when I'm able to express it to a point where I close my eyes and I think about the person I am on the inside, and then I look at the mirror on the outside, either the mirror on the wall or the social mirror around me, and that reflection is pretty close to where my image of my identity is, it eases my gender dysphoria, and it feels so good. That is what gender dysphoria is. It's a misalignment with your gender expression and your gender identity. When your gender identity is not expressed, it hurts. And it hurts it manifests in different ways. And wherever that focus seems to be on where you're noticing the difference of this social or this wall mirror image of myself is not anywhere close to my identity, it is very, very painful. But there is hope, and there is such a joy for me knowing that we have such good treatments that help people ease their gender dysphoria. For me, it took surgeries, it took hormones, it took laser hair removal processes, and all of those things eased my gender dysphoria, and it allows me to be happy about myself. It's great.
It's an absolutely inspiring journey that you've been on. MJ, do you have any questions for Brandi? And they can be completely unrelated or related.
I don't, because I didn't know what we were doing, really. I had never met Brandi before. I've only heard stories.
What is your connection to trans people or trans community? Do you have what is your familiarity with trans experiences?
I don't really have, I guess, at this point, much of a connection with a lot of trans people.
Yes, I wanted to bring that up because I knew that was going to make a good point.
Hmm.
And that's the case with most Americans and most people in general, because the trans community makes up about not even 1% of the population in general. So most people aren't going to have close connections with trans people. And the
Nope.
only information they're going to get about trans experiences are what they hear in their news sources, in their social media sources. And what's scary right now is in 2024, in this political year, in our political climate, they're making trans existence a political issue. And it is usually within the top three issues brought up when they're talking about political parties, specifically one political party in our country. And it's pretty scary. There are more than 400 anti-trans bills written thus far
Yeah.
in 2024. In 2023, there were more than 500 anti-trans bills written, and in 2022, there were more than 250. And so this is really ramping up. And this is getting very scary on some of the bills that are being proposed. And so most Americans are only hearing propaganda from social media outlets that they listen to and news sources that they listen to. And a lot of that is feeding and propagating and uplifting these anti-trans bills. So there's a social grassroots movement to dehumanize the transgender community in our country. And that is pretty scary right now.
It's very scary. And the thing I worry about with social media as being an information source in general is you click on that one thing that you're curious about. And then AI or algorithms or whatever have you start feeding you more of that. And you fall into this rabbit hole where you don't see any outside perspective. And this becomes your world, and this becomes your truth, and this becomes what is, what is at risk, with America nowadays. I challenge anybody to make sure that you're always taking a look at the other side.
Critical thinking skills are lacking in this country, and that is what's propagating a lot of this misinformation and this hate propaganda.
MJ, what are you chuckling about over there?
The critical thinking skills comment. There's a lot of skills missing in this country lately.
Common sense.
But
Oh gosh, there was something else I was going to say and I completely lost it with your commentary.
I didn't mean to shift us into politics. I'm sorry. Let's shift somewhere else.
No, that's okay. We normally avoid politics in general, but you're being very respectful in the way that you're addressing it. And we don't want to ignore the issues that face people. And this is a group of people that are having to face these concerns, these very valid concerns. And you're talking about statistics, which you can't, statistics are fact. We are in February and there is that massive number of anti-trans bills. It's scary. Okay, yeah, no, I remember my comment. It's totally political, like where's America going? I'm just I'm going to leave it. Education's weird nowadays, people. They don't actually teach critical thinking.
no.
So no. Okay, I'm going to do it. We can cut it out if we need to, but in my child's kindergarten class, for her social studies, the lesson was how to be a good citizen. I kid you not, how to be a good citizen. And I'm just like, wait, why aren't we learning how the government is supposed to be a good government? Like that's the way this system is supposed to work. It's for the people. The people are not for that's anyway. So, oh my gosh. Yay. So that's that. we totally took a left turn in Albuquerque here. So I will ask MJ one more time because he has made comment that I kind of grab when we have these interviews because I have so many questions. I just bubble over. So MJ, did you have no?
No, I'm good.
You're good. You've officially met the Brandi.
Finally.
And I met the MJ.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Then before I ask him for his naughty limerick interjection that has become, the standard, Randy, is there anything else you wanted to add to this episode?
Oh, let's give a good definition of gender.
Okay.
Consider the following. You are not looking at my gender identity, and I am not looking at your gender identity. No one can ever see your gender identity because your identity is within you, and you are the only person who has access to it. What I am seeing when I look at y'all is your gender expression. And what y'all are seeing when you look at me is my gender expression. Our gender expressions are reflections of our gender identities. And these reflections, they are viewed through the lenses of our gender performances. My gender performance and your gender performance is how we interact with not just the society we live in, but also how we interact with our own gender identity. Okay, to simplify all that jargon, gender identity equals your inner self. Gender expression equals how you project that identity from inward to outward. And gender performance equals how you interact with society and yourself.
Beautiful. Beautifully put.
You need to put out as much you as you feel comfortable putting out there
Into the world.
and that is the journey. The journey is going in, identifying, discovering, and pulling out and expressing. And that's all we can do with our identity. You have two choices after you discover your identity. You can either express it or you can stifle it.
I tell you what, it is hard to put that back in the box. I'm just I do not recommend, and the other side, as hard as it is to recognize that and bring that forth and out into the world, it is liberating. And my journey is not near as involved in everything you've had to go through, but it's a whole nother world.
To be me means more than anything else in this world. And I feel very fortunate and privileged that I can walk around in our society expressing who I am.
And society is very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Just gonna say it. All right, we got sappy, and we all know how well I deal with sappy and feels. So, MJ, I think this is a perfect time. Save me from the feels. Do you have a naughty limerick today?
I do.
You're prepared?
I am.
Okay.
Kind of. It's not very good, but I have one.
I mean, are any of them? But
No.
Sorry.
No, they're not.
Score one for me.
Uh-huh. You'll pay later.
Yes, please.
A farmer from old Albuquerque had sexual leanings quite murky. He had sex with 3 sheep, which was over quite brief, then consensual sex with a turkey.
Consensual sex with...
Didn't say they were good.
Again, and here's how I always read into them. You cannot have consensual sex with animals. And a turkey. Turkeys are mean. They're foul. Ha, pun intended. But I would worry for someone's safety.
It is New Mexico. Things are different down there. It's possible.
Oh gosh, that's our second Albuquerque reference this episode.
That's why I grabbed that one.
Oh,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I see.
My family heritage has been in the New Mexico territory since the late 1600s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy moly, you traced it back that far.
Oh, yeah. I am the first generation of non-Spanish speaking. They maintained their Spanish tongue the entire time they were in New Mexico until my generation.
Wow.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
I know Donde está la biblioteca? That's all I got.
Where's the library?
Where is the library?
Oh, my Spanish is awful because my father, him and his siblings, when they were young, it was just after the Brown versus Board of Education ruling. And so there was a backlash when they had to accept children into their schools. And my dad and his sisters didn't speak English. And so they were punished and shamed for not speaking English. So much so that when they grew up, none of them taught their children Spanish, made sure we all spoke English.
Oh.
So it makes me sad. So I didn't really learn Spanish growing up.
But as you've taught us, you can learn more about yourself and more about the world at any age. At any age.
See.
All right. Brandi, thank you so very, very much for doing this. I can't wait to have you back for more episodes
Oh, let's
because
do many, many episodes. This is so much fun.
this is a great time.
Okay,
If you
let me promote my YouTube channel.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
see, I'm bad at that. Thank you very much. Yes, do the
Should have had an
thing.
outline.
Either you can get to my website at www.itsbrandysworld.com, and there's going to be a link in the podcast. Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Cool.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
so we have a link for my website, and also I've been ramping up my activism on YouTube, and it's a YouTube Brandi Beckett, or it's Brandy's World at YouTube. So either one, you can find me there.
They
And
are
I'm making videos
fantastic.
talking about trans, but it is Brandy's World. So I also talk about other things, as in human evolution was my most recent episode I launched. So
I haven't caught that. I have the link, so I'm very
yes.
excited to watch that. But yeah, thank you because I forget to do the actual businessy promotey type stuff. So we will make sure, and by we I mean MJ will make sure that we put that link in the episode as well.
Oh, yes. And also, I'm available for public talks. And my booking agency is to All American Entertainers at Brandi Beckett.
10 out of 10 recommend booking because holy wow, people got just a little snippet of it here today. All right, well, thank you, Brandi.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to our next episode. Yay.
Yay! All right, well, thank you everybody as always for listening, enduring through MJ's commentary and dirty lyrics. He looks so offended. But we will be back next week. In the meantime, stay you, stay beautiful, feel good, be naughty. Good night. And a turkey. Turkeys are mean. They're foul. Thanks again for listening to this podcast. I started Boink in 2022 with the goal to create a safe environment and culture for all genders and sexual orientations, to learn about and embrace every part of themselves and one another. We offer workshops, events, and various inclusive products, along with consultations, to make sure we take a holistic approach to enhancing individuals' sexual satisfaction with themselves or their partners. I believe that when you accept yourself and your partner on the most intimate of levels, it filters out into your daily life. The World Health Organization recognizes this, saying sexual health is fundamental to the overall health and well-being of individuals, couples, and families, and to the social and economic development of communities and countries. So as long as you'll have us, Boink will be here. Kink-affirming, gender-blurring, sex-fulfilling. And you can find any of our details at www.boink-ed.com.